To call Howard Zinn to the stand.
Welcome to the Advocates, Professor Zinn.
Howard Zinn is an historian, an old friend of mine, I believe a client somewhere along the way, and he's been involved in civil disobedience both in the South and against the war in Vietnam. Professor Zinn, why civil disobedience today? Why not wait for what our adversary witnesses have said, the normal processes of government to catch up with the war in Vietnam?
Why do you call him Al and me Professor Zinn?
You're a client.
I was listening to the congressman, the former congressman, the present congressman, the senator, listening to Congressman O'Neill, and they all talk as if the political process were a quite simple one, and that is that if everybody would just be nice and talk nice to your congressman, write him letters, write letters to the newspaper, sign petitions, that the war in Vietnam would end, the bombers would be brought home, the GIs would be brought home, and the power-hungry American military establishment would lose its hunger. That's not the way things have happened in this war, and that's not the way things have happened in history. Throughout American history, the political leaders have always exhorted the American people to be nice and quiet and leave things to them. But when very serious evils confronted the American people, they had to go beyond the congressmen and the senators, and they had to commit civil disobedience, and they had even to break the law. And the abolitionists had to do it, and right here in Boston, they had to violate federal law by trying to bring a slave away from the federal marshals. They had to commit civil disobedience. The labor movement had to do this. They had to violate the law. They had to disrupt things. They had to do all sorts of impolite things. They had the sit-ins of sit-down strikes of 1936 and 37. And only this finally brought that modicum of justice that the labor movement demanded. And the civil rights movement went through the same thing. And you know that Congress did not act on the civil rights laws of 64 and 65 until blacks went out into the streets and made a commotion. They did not do it on the basis of some polite discourse.
Professor Zinn, if I can interrupt you for a minute, because I want to get, before we run out of time, I want to get to one point. Both Al Lowenstein and Senator Hart and Tip O'Neill have made promises to us tonight. They've said if we wait and don't disrupt Congress and don't get people excited and irritated, then they will end the war in Vietnam by December, according to Mr. O'Neill, by some other date. Why not wait and make them live up to the promissory note they've made?
We have had promissory notes from Congress for 6 years. For 6 years, Congress has promised to preserve our lives, our liberties, and have promised to defend the Constitution of the United States, which is an oath that they took. For 6 years, Congress violated that oath, as the President violated that oath, by carrying on and acceding to a constitutional war. Mr. O'Neill, who exhorts us to quietude and obeisance to law, voted for every single military appropriation bill. Of 21 military appropriation bills brought up before Congress between 1965 and 1970, he voted for every single one of them. No, I don't think we can depend on Congress. And the American political system, you know, we have been brought up to believe that the American political system works beautifully. It is democratic. Congress represents us. The president is elected. He represents us. It doesn't work that way. Democracy depends on people speaking out, and in times of great crisis, on people creating a commotion. Garrison once said, when they accused him of breaking the law, of disrupting things, of antagonizing people, he said, "Slavery, sir, will not be overthrown without excitement."
All right, Mr.
A tremendous excitement.
Thank you, Mr. Zinn.
Good stand up. When Garrison made that statement, as quoted by you in your book, he said, "We do not have public opinion on our side, so we must act." Today, on the issue in Vietnam, we have public opinion. Just who is this organized disruptive tactic designed to influence?
the organized disruptive tactic that you keep describing as disruptive,
That's what
yes,
we're talking
of course,
about.
is designed to make people think.
Who?
You know, it's designed to make the public think. It's designed to represent to the public the seriousness of the war. Now, if bombs were falling on Boston tonight, if they were falling on Cambridge, if they were falling all around us, and if children were dying all around us, and this was being decided by people, and these planes were being sent out by people sitting in City Hall, and somebody said, let's get everybody together and march on City Hall and stop this, and what would you say? Well, how is this actually going to work? Will the members of the City Council be perhaps offended by this? What I'm getting at is that there's something in your comprehension of what is going on in Vietnam which is lacking, and that is.
I believe.
That is.
I'm sorry. I do not.
What is lacking is some understanding of how serious this all
exactly,
is.
Mr. Zinn, believe me, my belief in the seriousness is why I think that dropping bombs on Cambridge, like dropping bombs on Hanoi, is not a way of producing effective political action.
But we're dropping bombs every day in Vietnam.
I know, and you seem to think that the same strategy at home is the one to pursue. I'm disagreeing with that.
The same strategy?
Yes.
I'm not suggesting dropping
bombs. The United States is wreaking havoc in Hanoi,
action.
and you favor wrecking havoc in Washington.
Are you equating?
In fairness to Professor Zinn, I don't think he's talking about dropping bombs, but he is talking about
disrupting. You believe that physical disruption is going to produce a sensible political result, where physical disruption elsewhere does not. We're disagreeing on the consequences of that, and also on the costs. Tell me, what should those who are watching this program, perhaps they're in the American Legion members, perhaps who want the president to fight on to military victory, what, according to your philosophy, should they do in May? Go down to Washington?
I can't tell the people who want military victory.
You are saying act according to your conscience.
Will you let me answer the
Please.
question? I can't tell the people who want military victory, which is now a minority of the American people, what to do. But that great majority of the American people who are opposed to the war should do everything that they are impelled by their conscience to do. And you need to recognize that some people are impelled by their conscience to write to their congressmen, and other people are compelled by their conscience to go to Washington and to say to the people in the government offices, stop work, disobey, because the violence of our time is caused by obedience. Now, let me just finish my point. What we are trying to do in Washington is not to tell everybody in the country to do exactly what we're doing. What we're trying to do in Washington is to tell people in the country that they need, in their own way, to disobey the government in every... GIs to disobey the call to war, young people to disobey the draft induction notice. That's what we need.
We've had examples of that. George Wallace, Governor Faubus, others disobeying the law.
They would do that in any case. They would do that in any case. They aren't stimulated by us.
No.
It's not our action that brings their action.
Do you believe that might will be right? Are you confident?
This is not might. We're talking about nonviolent action. Are you equating what we're doing in Washington with what is happening every day in Vietnam?
I'm acquainting. I am.
This is right against might.
No. If you right is to act within the law. If you
will right is not only to act within the law.
No, it's also
to act according to conscience.
Right. An individual act of conscience to break an unjust law. As in many of the cases you're talking about, I will refuse to obey a law to return a fugitive slave because I disagree with slavery. That individual act, the individual strikes of the students over Cambodia, which was I will not go to class, that is different than organized action. A group of us are going to get together and physically stop the government. The slogan of the May demonstration is, if the government doesn't stop the war, we will stop the government. We will take the law into our hands, and whoever the consequences, we will impose those. That is the prescription which others have followed. In the Weimar Republic, Hitler followed that.
A short response from Professor Zinn, and then we're going to have to close it. A very short response.
This is not the Weimar Republic. This is the United States in 1971.
It's a good time to end it, Professor Zinn, and I'm afraid I'm going to have to.